Welcome to the Increda-dental podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Flynn. Our goal is to make a positive impact in the dental field. I have been a dental assistant, a biller, an office manager, a scheduler, a hygienist, and a dental coach, which makes me your biggest fan. My husband was in the military and we traveled all over the United States. I had opportunities to work in many different practices, and I saw incredible practices and practices that had a lot of potential within them. Thank you for joining us. Let's dive into the podcast. Welcome to the Increda-dental podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Flynn. We've had several offices contact us, and they're having struggles with plateauing. So if you, with your business, are seeing plateau issues, first off, know you're not alone. And we're going to go over ideas and ways to recognize why you're plateauing and how you can change that. A lot of times, the business will say, oh, I need to add things. I need to add sedation. I need to add implants or aligners or removal of third molars. But if it's a overhead issue, adding more things, more items, doesn't cause that overhead issue to go down. It may cause it to go down a little bit, but if we're losing money at the back end, I usually call it bleeding out, then it's not going to matter what we add because we're still bleeding out a cost that is high and it's not going to change the revenues. So I'm going to give a couple examples and then we're going to dive into how you can help your practice and give some numbers. So Panda Express. I don't know if you've been with Panda Express or eaten there. Before they used to have containers where you would have spoons in one, forks in one, and knives in another. And then they changed that and put them in wrappers. So when they handed you your food, you had a wrapper with a spoon, a fork, and a knife. And now when they hand you a container, it only has a fork and a napkin. And they've reduced their costs because they found people were not using the spoon and the fork. They were going unused. It was increasing their costs and it was adding to the landfill. So they felt, let's get rid of it. And that's what they do. They still have them and people can have one, a knife or a spoon if they would like one, but they have to ask for it. So that's one thing they did. But I'm not encouraging you to decrease what you offer to your customers. I want you to know your metrics. I want you to know your numbers. And that's one thing that Starbucks is really amazing at. They know their numbers. They keep track of seasonal items. They keep track of items that are in demand or up and coming items. They survey their clients. They are really, really honed in on their numbers. While we're not exactly a service, we are a service in an individual healthcare way. So I want to speak about numbers and how you can help your practice reduce the overhead or from bleeding out. So we have to understand there's some things that are just fixed costs that you're going to have: rent, taxes, insurance, you're going to have wages. Those are going to be pretty much fixed costs. But there's some items that are not fixed that we have wiggle room on and that we need to be a little more aware of regarding how much we're putting in. So one is inventory, items of disposable use, the amount that we're spending on that. Now, one office that we've met with, they had several different spots where they were keeping the same equipment or the same disposable equipment. And it's what they had was they had ordered a huge bulk pack of polishing paste over, I think it was 3,000 units of polishing paste. I know this was a smaller practice. It only had a hygienist to a hygienist and a half per week. And with that, they didn't have enough room to keep the polishing paste in one area. And so they had polishing paste in 3 different areas, but no one knew where all the polishing paste was. So they were ordering more when they didn't need more, when they didn't know where the materials were. So make sure you have a very organized way where you know where all your materials are located, preferably in one place. And that way you're not ordering items that do not need to be ordered. Now, most offices, the inventory of items, the cost of these disposable items should be around 5 to 8%. And if you're going over, something's going on. Either materials are being ordered too much, or you're not getting a great deal from the person who you're ordering from, or there's just another issue that's going on. I have unfortunately seen where a practice, they were going through materials really fast and they looked into one of the materials, which was whitening gels, and one of their employees was stealing the whitening gel and selling it out of her house. And that was super unfortunate. So
know your numbers, know where you're at, and keep track of what percent, because you should have a 5 to 8% range on disposable materials. Now, lab costs should be anywhere from 9 to 12%, depending on what you do. If you do all on X's cases, if you do specialty items, your cost might be a little bit more than this. But if you don't do that, if you're like main bread and butter, crown, bridges, denture, yours should be lower towards that 9%. And if you're getting charged a higher rate, talk to your lab person. Maybe they're charging you a higher fee. Be open to negotiation, because we need to remember, we negotiate with insurance. Why not negotiate with the lab and talk to them and see how you can have a more healthier relationship, more equilibrium in that. Marketing. Marketing should cost anywhere from 5 to 7%, depending on if you're a new office or how old your office is, but also know where people are coming from. We've seen practices where they're marketing and putting a lot of money into marketing. The one item that they thought they were getting a great return on turned out they were only getting 2 patients a month from that marketing avenue, and that they needed to switch. What they were doing was not working, and they needed to change how they were marketing. So be aware of how you're marketing and then if it's working. Equipment, hardcore equipment. These are your Statum, your sensors. These are your hardcore equipment. Should be around 9%. And then office equipment, your copy machine, paper, stamps, things like that, 2 to 3%. And then miscellaneous items. Some things are just don't have a category, and this should be 1 to 2%. Should be a small amount. And then phone, around 1%. So be aware of your cost. What percent are these items to your practice? And are you in equilibrium? Are you in homeostasis for your practice? Look at these and find out if there's things that need to be changed, and do some investigation. Be aware that maybe you might be killing it in some of these areas, and some of these areas, there's room for improvement, and that's all right. This is an opportunity for you to recognize where you're losing money and where you can improve before you start looking at adding additional items to your practice, because it won't fix the practice. So be wise as you move forward. Recognize if you're bleeding out, if there's some issues that need to change, and then work on those before adding new services to your practice, because it's exciting to add new services. It's exciting to see revenues increase. But if your equipment and supplies and those items increase with it, you're not really making improvement. And I want your practice to be the joy that you dreamed about when you started this journey. I want you to have the practice that you go in smiling and you leave smiling, being grateful that you had a wonderful day. Thanks for joining me. Have an excellent day.